Hey, Tom, how are you?
Good. How are you doing?
Excellent, excellent. Nice to meet you. I'm Brandon, obviously. All right.
Fine.
Thank you for taking the time out to be interviewed. I really, like I said, I can't thank you enough for it. So I just wanted to start by having you tell us a little bit about you and why you decided to run for Congress.
Okay. So I've been where should I start? I've been a neuroscientist for 20 years. I've been doing brain research. I work currently at Carnegie Mellon University. I switched over from Pitt. I worked at Pitt for 17 years. I know that doesn't add math, and there was a couple year period between grants. I'm a military veteran. I was with the 82nd Airborne. I was stationed in Panama on the first of the 508. This is way back in 88, 92, like back when the drug wars were going on in Panama. Where we did patrols and stuff like that. Pablo Escobar is pretty popular now because of the Netflix show,
Right.
stuff like that. I believe he's assassinated in 92, back when I got out. So why did I get into politics? I got into politics, it's kind of like a long story. I'll make it very quick. I grew up in Washington, Pennsylvania, and Washington County, Pennsylvania is a very poor area to begin with. It's rural. And I grew up in pretty abject poverty. A lot of times my only meal was a school meal. When I got into the military, I was 130 pounds. I gained 20 pounds in my first year of the military because I only had 3 meals a day. I did odd jobs. I started cutting grass when I was 9. Anything for a little bit of money. I got pizza and played a couple video games, baling hay, stuff like that. Anything I could do. And what's funny is a lot of people grew up with me. Even I don't even think my best friend knew how poor I was, to be honest, because of that. So I always had this thing in the back of my brain about people who are exploited. Because when I grew up, it was the 80s, and in the 80s, in the Reagan era, this is when the Republicans, this is before the moral majority, because they don't come into play until the 89. They took up this. What did they call it? It was the welfare mom, or it was the, they came up with this campaign strategy that they would make up that what is hurting the national economy are these people who have dozens and dozens of kids, hundreds of kids, apparently, that are sucking away the national thing, and it's the poor people, and it's these mentally ill people. And what they started doing is shutting down state and federal hospitals, taking away stuff like that. And what they did is they demonized the poor. Well, I was poor. That never left me. I got out in the military to kind of escape poverty, and it didn't really come back until 2010 when the market crashed. And what we did was we bailed out the banks, not the people. Occupy Wall Street happened. I went out taking photographs, interviewing, and I saw that people didn't care. Majority of the people didn't care. There was a huge social movement. And so I started writing and stuff, and writing on social issues. And people don't want to read about that. They don't want to read about things that make them sad.
Right.
They don't want to read about things that, like, the way the world is. They want to believe the world is nice and fluffy. And it occurred to me, no protest, no nothing can affect the government for the American people, except for one day, and that's election day. I was like, but my vote doesn't count.
Right.
Big money is against me. Advertising is against me. Everything is against me. My vote doesn't count. And I got this idea about 4 years ago. If I want to make change, I have to become one of the people who write the laws, who are the change. And that's where I started this idea. I know that was a really long answer and stuff like that.
No, that's good. I was going to ask you first and foremost, because we have a lot of increasing political polarity and all that tension going on. Would you describe yourself as left, right, or centered? And what would your priorities or platform points be for your campaign? Since obviously I'm in Ohio and you're in Pennsylvania.
Take this as a compliment. You're such a journalist. Every journalist asks me that. Along the political spectrum, I don't have an answer for you.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not trying to be facetious. It honestly, if you look at my economic stance, it's moderate, right?
Mm-hmm.
I want to build small businesses. I want education for more skilled labor, which is really important because in 2030, this is the Bureau of Labor Statistics saying we're going to lose 40% of the jobs we have.
Wow.
Forget what we have now. Forget our economy. Forget everything now. 40% of the jobs that exist will be lost to automation. And people say, really? Like, can that be possible? Think about the Google car alone. The Google car, right, in 13 years will be on the road. What does that mean for business? Well, it can drive 24/7, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's tractor trailers. That's local shipping. That's taxis. That's buses. You can see the Truckers Association of America says it's 5.4 million jobs. That's just one aspect. What we need is higher skilled labor to make up for this new thing. So what am I going to do? My stance is kind of moderate. We got to worry about job training. We got to worry about small businesses. I got a small business rescue grant I talk about on the website. A grant instead of a loan, so that if it still fails, you don't go deeper in debt. I'm about bringing in new industries, sliding subsidies based on the more economically depressed an area is, the more federal subsidies you'll get for your small businesses. I want to rip the subsidies from profitable corporations like Exxon.
Mm-hmm.
They do not need them. They do not deserve them.
No.
Who deserves it are people who are doing startups, who are starting small businesses, who have good ideas. America needs innovation again. We need to put our good minds into the economy, and you do that by helping them out. And people say, well, that's government getting into small business. That's encroachment. The very first U.S. Treasury was Alexander Hamilton. Guess who came up with subsidies? Alexander Hamilton. It's called Hamiltonian economics. You can't tell me that this is wrong and or infringement, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you can't tell me that that's an infringement in government getting into business and socialism when you allow it to happen to Exxon, BP, and all these other corporations. Why is it okay for them to get billions and billions of dollars? 75% of subsidies only go to 1,000 corporations. Why? That should be going to developing our economic base. And then if you look at my platforms, I'm very progressive. Equality. Equality means equal. Everybody is equal. I think it's horrible that we have laws to protect small interest groups, because why do we have to protect small interest groups? We are all equal. And the idea that we have to do that is an indication that things are unfair. We need to make everything fair. Now, I'm not saying that we wipe out those laws by any means, because we need them, right? Women in the workforce, 80% for white, 60% for African American, I believe it's 55% for Latino women, right?
Mm-hmm.
We have to have those laws because people would not do fair things. But the idea that the laws exist says that there's something morally wrong with our society, if that makes any sense.
Absolutely.
So people would say I'm very progressive in that way. I say government shouldn't be in our lives. And I challenge people who also agree with that statement, who may be very far right, of LGBT. Why are you so worried about who people are sleeping with?
Right.
And why do you want to regulate that? Do you want government in your lives telling you about who you should be with and who you shouldn't? No, I don't. So that's a very right stance on a very left stance. So where do I fall on the spectrum? I don't know. I just want people to vote for me and support me based on the stances and not where I pick myself. How's that?
That sounds great. That was a good answer. So, are there any issues proposed by Donald Trump and the current Republican majority that you could see yourself? Obviously, you can't obviously see yourself working with them on should you be elected.
Actual stances or what he said he would do. Because he did say about building the infrastructure, which I'm for, right? And I think the very first thing you build, infrastructure, very first thing on the bill is your power grid. Why the power grid and not bridges? I am not saying bridges are unimportant, but we need to start the power grid now because we need alternative energy. And we need to start moving in this direction. Right now, the power grid can't take fluctuations that the alternative energy gives. And there's all these kind of, oh my God, I can't remember what they're called at the moment, but there's all these surge kind of protectors that protect against the surges. And if you get them off wrong, this is kind of a cyber attack, how cyber attacks work. They get them out of sync and then they blow up. I understand that. So we should start there. That will provide jobs. That will be for the future. That's for the environment. It's for, So I would agree with that. I would also agree, I don't like the trade deals. Trade deals are for corporations. They're not for the American worker. And what are we doing? Right? When we talk about globalization, the American worker, it's my cat. When we're talking about the American worker has to understand that we're in globalization, we're in a new world income, that the American worker can't be paid the way they were in the 50s, 60s, 70s, blah, 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 because they're competing with other countries. What they're saying is we're moving our companies in countries where we can have slave labor, where we have children working, where we are working people for 12 hours, where we are paying cents. And you, as the American worker, should just suck that up. And they use that also as a leverage in workforce insecurity as a way of bringing down wages. This started in 78 with Alan Greenspan. He gives a congressional report, and if you YouTube it, you can find the videos of this congressional testimony of talking about his economic success was built on workforce insecurity. Because workforce insecurity means I don't get paid fairly, I don't got the benefits I want, and I can't get a raise, but you know what, at least I have a job, and it's much better than, say, the other grocery store down the street, right? And this is a way of leveraging. And Alan Greenspan literally is bragging about this in Congress, that his economic success was based on economic insecurity. What also happened in the late 70s? They start attacking unions, busting unions, right? What does unions provide? Job security, income security, benefit security, right? All of this is manufactured. He's in the 90s, there's another video, and the 2000s, there's a video of him talking about, actually, the last one I found this coincidentally doing research because I'm doing these articles on my experiences, the campaign, and my stances for daily costs. I call Fear of Living on a Campaign, a congressional campaign. And at the last one he gives in the 2000s, he says we are pushing workforce insecurity too far. Because if you push it too far and you get the inequality gap too much, people will start to get angry. And you get too many people angry at once, you're going to have a revolt. You're going to have social movements. The first ripple was 2010. That was the Tea Party. The second ripple was the far left, Occupy Wall Street. That's where I got. And then now we're seeing more and more social movements in different fashions, whether it's 415, Black Lives Matter, and who knows what's going to be. I guess you could call it a resistance kind of that, but it's all inequality. It's all unfair treatment, and all of this comes from all that same kind of source.
Right. It's interesting that you brought that up because me and my grandmother were just talking about that, and she was saying she doesn't understand why the Republicans want to do these tax cuts and benefit the rich so much, because every single civil war has been started off of the poor getting to a point that they're so poor that they revolt, like you said. So another hot topic.
Wait. Can I add something to back up your grandmother?
Absolutely.
So Socrates writes in, it is Book 8 of the Republic, and he writes that when, he doesn't say it in these words. What he says is when the poor gets poorer and the rich get richer, and that disparity gets too much, that the poor will revolt, and that somebody who's basically a nobody from the poor will rise up. Mm-hmm. And it will happen every time. And he's writing it in a sense that that's a weakness of democracy, because everybody has a voice and stuff like that, and they will only take so much before the poor start to basically coalesce into a force. Mm. This is also done, talked about with James Madison. James Madison in the constitutional debates talks about this very specifically, and why the Constitution has to be written to protect the wealthy. He says, he calls it the opulent from the masses. And then James Smith, the father of economics, also talks about this in 1776. This is a recurring theme in our political system. Does that mean it's wrong? No. Mm-hmm. Does it mean it's right? No. It just means this is what happens when inequality gets too much. This is why a guy like me who's wearing a backcountry t-shirt could be rising like this and could be speaking out and could have people saying, you're right, mm-hmm. because they are making the environment, the atmosphere in such a way that if you understand the system and you can speak out, you're articulate, and you have plans of what's the problem, how to fix the problem, you're going to get power. It's just the way democracy works.
Absolutely. So the biggest, I won't say the biggest, because there's a lot of other breaking news as you can see today. Should we repair the ACA, implement the American Health Act, or move to a single-payer system?
Move to single-payer system.
Absolutely. Look, I'm sorry, I'm not supposed to be biased, but I'm like, absolutely, we need to move.
Here's another left issue that the right can agree with, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you're pro-business and things like that, the last thing you need a small business to be paying for is your workers' employment, mm-hmm. right? Not employment. I'm sorry. You should be paying for your workers' employment. Medical care, right? Let's take that burden off the small businesses and the employees. Let's put it on the government. We're the worst industrial nation for health care, and we're the most expensive. We do have models, and we can borrow from many, many different industrialized countries for a model, refine it, where Americans were smart, and we can make it flexible so we can keep adjusting it to make it better and better. We can make it work, and it absolutely should be a reality.
Absolutely. I am going to say I agree with you on that. So having been a veteran, or currently are, what are some areas that we need to fix in veteran affairs?
There's a lot of issues with veteran affairs, and I'm going to tell you, I don't have answers for everything. Mm-hmm. I'll tell you what I have ideas for. One is I'd like to improve the VA. The VA is tens of thousands of bodies short. The VA is also underfunded to the point of where they don't have enough medical supplies. That's awful. I want to make it easier for veterans to be able to go into the VA, and I want it to be more responsive to veterans. I want to make sure veterans are being 100% taken care of. I'm not bashing the VA. It's not the VA itself. It's the federal government support of the VA that's failed. It's not the VA hospitals. It's the support for VA hospitals that's failed. Mm-hmm. I want people to understand that. And when you got a Republican Senate, a Republican Congress, and a Republican president who says that they're pro-veteran, pro-military, they increase the military budget by 54 billion, which is more than all of Russia's alone,
Right.
let alone the 600 billion we already pay. And you're telling me you can have better hospitals that can at least take care of the veterans that already fought in war and have already gone through the trauma that overseas duty does. I think you got to question like who you're backing and who you're voting for. That's the number one thing. I think there's a lot of big issues. I like to improve education and the ability of veterans to take advantage of education. For instance, there is trade school and GI Bill. I want to make sure that more veterans can do that and find out why veterans aren't taking advantage of that. Right now, the GI Bill is way better than I had. I was in 25 years ago. Now they have, from what I understand, this is coming from my daughter who's in now, and she just corrected me on a lot of stuff. So this is my sword. They pay in-state tuition. They have books covered at $1,200 living stipend. I could be wrong about this. I haven't looked into it. I just found out about this. That's really good. So why aren't veterans taking advantage of it? I want to find out what's going on with that. The GI Bill was a huge part of the New Deal that got the American economy going after World War II to keep us out of the Great Depression. And it was a big boost to our industrial industry and our economy in general. I think we should keep that going.
Absolutely.
I got issues that I don't have exact answers for. Oh, can I say one more thing?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
This is for, so one of the issues I would like to change, I haven't heard anyone else speak out about this. Sexual harassment for women in combat is horrible and it is unacceptable. And right now the policy is that there aren't paper trails, and paper trails need to happen when sexual harassment is reported. That needs to change. The second thing about that is commanders, lieutenants are reprimanded if they're getting too many reports for sexual harassment. And the way they do it in the military is they say if you get a lot of sexual harassment complaints, you're not doing your job because you're not controlling people. And actually, if you talk to the women, it's the opposite. Is where it's not being reported, women are afraid and they're in an environment where it's not welcome and there's no paper trail to show where it gets swept under the rug. I want to change that quite a bit. If women go to combat, they should be treated like human beings.
Absolutely.
They should be treated like human beings at all, but these women are willing to give their lives. We can treat them like human beings and heroes that they are.
That's absolutely. Now I'm going to push you a little bit with these last two questions.
Sure.
So, and if you're uncomfortable with them, just let me know.
No, absolutely not.
So, considering the events of Trump releasing the classified information to Russia, firing Sally Yates and Jim Comey, the Comey memo, Donald Trump trying to influence the FBI investigation, do you consider him impeachable at this point?
Absolutely. Do you want to hear a prediction?
Absolutely.
Of what's actually going to happen? Well, I don't mean to sound arrogant like that.
No.
A prediction of what I believe will actually happen. So what I think they're doing, this comes from a Joe Biden aide inside the White House. He says, and he put it on Twitter, it's not like I'm talking to people in the White House, which should be kind of cool.
Right, it would be.
Yeah. He says that there are rumors of dementia, right? Now think about how genius this is. If you tack on that Donald Trump is suffering from dementia, well, what's that mean? Well, it means it's indefensible by him. Anything he says is disregarded because if he's found to have dementia, he's not in right of mind.
Right.
It also means he's not criminally negligent. Why would you do that? Now, I know most Americans want to see him go to jail. That's fine, but that's not the card that they want to play, and I'll explain why. So it's a peace offering. It's a get out of jail free card. It's saying if you step down, you don't go to prison because you've committed treason. And I will go on record saying, if everything is true, Donald Trump has committed treason and should be prosecuted. What I see happening is they're going to give him this deal. It's like a plea bargain of you can step down without being criminally, negligent in what you've done. Now, this brings up Article 5 of the 15th Amendment. Is it 15th or 25th? Maybe it's Article 5 of the 25th Amendment, where in the competent president.
The 25th.
That's what this is setting up. I'm almost positive. And what I think is they're going to have him step down to basically evade jail, to stay out of prison. But otherwise, I am fully for the full force of the law. You commit treason, we prove it in courts, I'd be fine with him being life in prison in Leavenworth. I mean, I have no, right?
Right, I agree with you. He's just a person to where I try to be as impartial as I can be, because I do agree with and identify with a lot of the things that the Republican Party is about. But him as an individual, and I try to make sure I say that whenever I'm criticizing the Republican Party, it's not the Republican Party, it's just him as a person and how he presents it. And I had also made the argument of, I don't disagree with the Republican Party in and of itself as a whole and their values. I disagree with the people that are representing the Republican Party and their values, because they present it in such a I'm better than you condescending kind of a tone, and that's what I have an issue with. People like I'm just saying, from my opinion, people like Paul Ryan, who's just so nose in the air, I'm rich, better than you.
Yeah.
You take it how I'm going to give it to you. I mean, he was just doing that interview where him and his college friend were talking about throwing back kegs and taking away Medicaid from everybody. Why would you even reflect on that? But that's neither here nor there. How do we as a country heal in the aftermath of Donald Trump, no matter whether he goes to jail or does the 25th Amendment? How do we come back together?
That's going to take a very long time.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if it's possible, and I think it's going to take a couple decades, to be honest. We've done it before. You look at the Nixon era, right? And if you say, oh, Nixon, everyone's using Nixon now. But if you look at what was happening at that time, we had the Vietnam protests, we had civil rights, right? We had a very right wing. We have one of the most right wing presidents still. We were able to come back, but it took time. Maybe we came back. I mean, Jimmy Carter came back. I think there have been times, what Reagan set up was pretty awful. But we did come back. It wasn't to the point of where we're beating people in the streets, right? There's a lot of social, horrible things happening in, the 60s and previous that disappeared. I think we can come back. I think one thing that the left and right needs to do, I think it has to come from the left first, and one is quit insulting the intelligence of the right. I know that's gonna hurt a lot of people, and they're gonna be like, well, they're racist and da 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 da. It's like, all you're doing is having people dig in. And what we know is with racism is it's reduced with education, it's reduced with inequality, it's reduced with exposure. Let's quit like going head to head combat, and let's let's be the first to take the high road, basically. I know people say, well, the high road hasn't worked. Have we ever actually taken the high road, honestly? We mock people in the media, we mock people in the TV shows, we mock. And I was guilty of it. I'm not going to pretend that I wasn't. I got in a lot of arguments, and I said, okay, well, fine. If you don't ever want to read a book, then go off.
Right.
But at the same time, now, and I'm not going to lie, like, now I'm getting to a position where I'm going to be one of those people that's going to be responsible for laws and be responsible. It can't go on. If we're going to do this, human beings, we're all human beings, and what do you do when you start insulting people and being aggressive? Well, you be aggressive back. That's what it's going to be. I don't see it coming from the right first, especially if Donald Trump goes down, because what does that say? It's another I told you so.
Right.
It's another self-fulfilling prophecy that you made a stupid decision, you backed the wrong person, you're not smart enough to know better, and there's going to be a lot of ha-ha, and we got you in the end. And it's just going to ramp things up, and it's going to cause more and more polarity. And what should be is, okay, we got it, you gave him a shot, he failed, let's actually talk about some people that can do such things, and let's worry about, like, us. Because for them, the only people that this benefits are the people that are in power now. Right. They benefit greatly by this polarity. They love it, the wedges, and they do it now. That's why they got these policies and talk about the takers and stuff like that. And they're the ones that are taking majority of the tax money. Right. Them and their wealthy friends are the ones taking majority of tax money, talking about the people taking the least amount as the takers. And they're talking about, like, Social Security. Oh, it's what do they call it? The entitlements.
Right, the entitlements.
They paid into it. It's like a bank account. It's their money.
Right.
They paid into Social Security. But just about everybody alive, nearly everybody alive, is paid into Social Security. It's their money. Leave people alone.
Exactly.
Anyways, yeah.
But no, that was my last question for you. I mean, you gave me a lot of great insight about everything. I was taking notes down. So if you saw me looking down a lot, I like to take notes during my interview so I can make sure I know, like, whatever. I just like to know what was all said without having to listen back through everything. So thank you. Well, you have anything else you wanted to add or anything like that?
I have a question for you.
Absolutely.
You're obviously thinking a lot about all of this. You've obviously talked to a lot of people, done a lot of these podcasts. What do you see?
What do I see? Well, maybe this will help me jump right into it. When I first started this show or whatever, I was not the person who voted. I did not vote. I didn't care about politics. In my generation, politics and civics get a bad rap because it's associated with history, and everyone hates history because it's so boring. There's no drama, that kind of stuff. And then when he got elected, which is the one thing I would actually, if I ever met him, I would say thank you, because he's the one who woke me up and made me snap into focus, like, wow, this is really happening. And I see my generation's soon to be the one that's going to be the one that's in the majority, making the decisions, having the most influence, and I see them all being distracted by reality TV, sports, entertainment, and that's all fine and well. But you have to make some room, at least for civics and whatnot. Democracy can't stand if the people aren't participating in it. We can't have a bunch of government officials that are like, oh my God, did you see Real Housewives last night? You can't just have stuff like that. So that's why I initially started the show, because I'm just like, this has got to stop. We need to start focusing on talking about the uncomfortable issues. And I see a lot of chaos. I see a lot of polarity. I see, no matter what happens with Donald Trump, whether he stays in office, gets impeached, anything, I think that it's going to be a dark time for us for a long time. because the Trump supporters are going to be in outrage no matter, if he goes out of office, the MAGA militia, as they call themselves, is going to hit the streets. I'm going to hit the street and party personally, but I see this all being about race too. I hate Joe Scarborough and I hate Morning Joe, but I do watch it because I do need to consider the conservative side of things. So I do make sure I entertain it. But he said this is the social and political reaction to Barack Obama. This is why we got Donald Trump. And I was just like, I could kind of agree to that a little bit. And that's, along the lines of why I say Hillary Clinton was the worst possible candidate. In addition to all her personal issues, you can't go, here's the first black president, here's the first woman president. America doesn't move that quickly. We might be the free world, but no. You can't just go back to back like that. So I knew that Hillary wasn't going to win to begin with. For many times I thought to myself, we're going to go into a civil war. It's going to happen again. I'm like, something's going to happen and it's going to go to war. And the more I see these black activists, like in Ferguson, 3 black activists were found dead and shot in the head in their car. And I'm just like, I said to myself one time I was doing a taping and I'm like, I'm wondering when my turn's going to be. And I accidentally blurted it out on the podcast. I'm like, when's my turn going to be? So I just don't get it. I always felt, I went to a predominantly Caucasian school, suburban. I wasn't the most wealthy kid coming up. They had Lexuses and Benz trucks. I had a Ford Explorer. So I've always felt like my generation is going to be the generation that may be able to help fix some of the polarity, fix some of the issues, but you never know. I don't know if that kind of explains your question at all.
No. I like, seeing what your perspective is. I was really hoping that the millennials were going to be awesome. I saw a lot of early studies that showed that 70% were independent, as opposed to the polarity of the two parties. Mm-hmm. And, regardless, I'm Democrats and stuff like that. What I like is the open-mindedness, right? Mm-hmm. And I feel like if I got the right platform, people are going to go for me. They're not looking for party necessarily. I think, especially after yesterday with 13% turnout, I think the youth vote is always going to be the youth vote. I think the closest it could come was 2008 with Barack Obama. He's the only president that I know of that ever actually got a youth vote. If you look at the 72 campaign, we're at the end of the civil rights. We're looking at still Vietnam, things like that. We have a what would be considered a progressive Democratic presidential nominee at that time in McGovern. We still got Richard Nixon, and we got Richard Nixon overwhelmingly by like 20%. And it's like, where was the youth vote?
Right.
Like you had at that time the largest social movements and protests in the entire American history. What happened to it? And when I go around and I'm going to these different committees, their majority of them are either retired or they're about to be retired people. And I think it's a symptom of human nature. It's not a bash against younger people or anything like that. But the more assets you have, the more you feel like you have a lot more to lose. And when you're middle-aged, you have everything, but you're secure. When you're older, you can lose a lot because of now you're relying on Social Security. You're relying on more social services, Medicaid and stuff like that. I think that's why they become more socially active. The youth could take over everything.
Right.
And that drives me nuts.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you don't have to give up your social groups. You don't have to give up your political groups. You don't have to give up your ideas. Just go into the party committees and become the people who select, who, oh my God, not nominate, they endorse
Right.
the candidates. They help the candidates. They organize for candidates, right?
Mm-hmm.
They can be the candidates.
Mm-hmm. Right.
If you do that, if you don't want to run for an office, go in and be part of the organization that actually does the political stuff. Because now it's not just a single day that you get to change a government and change the future. You're now organized in doing it all year round.
Mm-hmm.
And you are the people doing it.
Right.
Those are people controlling it.
I also think it's the politicians don't when they come out, they do stuff like, okay, they're gonna have a town hall, but it's not really, there's no awareness to it. I mean, like, they'll publish stuff in like the newspaper. Millennials don't read the newspaper, or they'll put stuff in the library. Millennials don't go to the library, you know. And I mean, I'm not saying that that's right on millennials to behave that way, but I don't think that the current congressional people do enough of reaching out to them, because they want votes and they know that the older generations are going to actually vote versus the millennials. And it's kind of like a double-sorted problem, because you want to help the millennials, but you want the older, you know, because I guess the millennials are fighting against themselves in a sense, you know. They're kind of their own worst enemy. I guess I should say we are kind of our own worst enemy.
Politicians are forced to listen to the people who vote.
Mm-hmm.
And there are databases, you know, it's called a VAN for the Democrats,
Mm-hmm.
where they look at super voters. And they know that they have to appease those people, and they know they don't have to appease anybody else because they won't vote.
Mm-hmm.
And if what you want to do is control the politicians, it's fine if you go to their offices and picket. It's fine if you go in the street and hold up a sign, but it doesn't give real pressure.
Mm-hmm.
What gives real pressure is that they see that you're voting.
Right.
And there's a database kept on this, and they know that you are voting, and they got your address, they know this, and they know now they have to cater to you.
Mm-hmm.
If you want a real social movement, all you gotta do is vote, and that puts you in a system, and now they know they have to cater.
Mm-hmm.
If that's what you want.
Right.
I'm not saying that people shouldn't get out on the streets. It's the First Amendment, and it's the First Amendment for a reason. It's the most important amendment to be able to speak against your government and to do that. But the way the government actually works in democracy, the only real power is election or running.
Mm-hmm.
I took up running. And I want people to take over. I want the average people to take over the government, because right now it's not the average people by any means.
Right.
Local governments, it is the local ground, but not at the federal level. The federal level, these are not average people. These are very wealthy people, very well connected, and I would love to see some of the people from these smaller communities and stuff like that in the youth vote and stuff take over and start moving up.
Mm-hmm.
That's how you do it. That's what who was George W. Bush's guy?
You mean the vice president?
The fat guy with the ball.
Who, Cheney? Dick Cheney?
No. His political strategist.
Oh,
starting
okay.
at the grassroots level. Oh my God, I can see him. I can see his.
And that, of course, was when I wasn't politically active, so I can't even tell you. So.
Oh my God, I can see the guy. Anyways, when he talked about starting at the grassroots level, that's what he meant. Mm-hmm. Take over the small offices first. Take over the committees first. Mm-hmm. It doesn't take any more time. If you're going to do all these other political groups, why not that one as well? Become part of the system. And they will. And those committees aren't going to fight against you. They want younger people. They want more voice. They want, because it's power. and his power to make things happen, to get more selection. Enough with these, these privileged people. I'm so tired of it.
Right.
I mean, you'll look me over and look at stuff I, obviously not standing for that or one of them.
One of the top.